increasing violence against Asian Americans. What he's seeing and why he's doing it. One-on-one with Cummins CEO Tom Linebarger in our top story. South Bend-based Pure Green Farms is growing pesticide-free greens in a 4-acre hydroponic indoor farm. CEO Joe McGuire explains what it takes to create a sustainable environment for year-round farming that uses 95% less water than traditional farms. Plus,
I'm Mary Rachel Redmond inside the original studio, where one of the most iconic painters of the 20th century taught America how to paint. We go inside the Bob Ross experience coming up.
Details on those stories and much more ahead on this edition of Inside Indiana Business. Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. Well, for decades, Cummins, Columbus-based Cummins, has built a reputation as an outspoken corporate champion on issues of sustainability, the environment, diversity, and inclusion. This week, Cummins taking a stand on the issue of increasing violence against Asian Americans. Chief Executive Officer Tom Linebarger issuing a memo to the company's more than 8,000 Indiana employees, nearly 60,000 employees worldwide, decrying acts of hate against Asian Americans, including employees, friends, and neighbors. Now, with details on what he is seeing, why he is choosing to speak out, pleased as always to be joined by Cummins CEO Tom Linebarger. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Gary. Nice to be here.
Well, as mentioned, and it's getting a lot of attention, certainly nationally, the rise in hate crimes and situations against Asian Americans. Certainly the situation in Atlanta, which has not officially been determined yet to be a hate crime, but it is really shining a light on something that is borne out in the numbers, that we're seeing increasing instances of hate directed at Asian Americans. What are you seeing?
The same. Whatever happens, whatever is determined by Atlanta, there is no question that the number of incidents is rising in our communities. I was recently speaking to our employee resource group, and where Asian Americans and Asian descent employees are there, and all of them expressed a mix of emotions of anxiety, of disappointment, of anger. But what they are feeling and seeing is an increase in aggressive tactics and incidents against them in neighborhoods that they used to feel welcome and safe. It's a clear change. It's a clear increase in violence and aggression, and it's making them feel scared and anxious for their families.
And you felt strongly enough about it to issue a memo to employees that was very specific, very direct about the situation, about things that can be done, things that should be done. And I think interesting, to me at least, I think is the history of Cummins dating back to the civil rights movement in speaking out and getting engaged in social issues.
We always want to speak up against discrimination, especially when it's affecting our employees, their families, and our communities. We know that discrimination makes a bad community, and it weighs on all of us. It impacts all of us negatively. It impacts our business because it's hard to recruit families to come to communities where hate is going on. They don't want to raise their kids in those environments. And it's also just weighs on all of us. We know that our workforce is not as productive when discrimination is going on, and it's not as easy to attract and retain the best talent. So we are always going to speak out on this, and this is the time.
Yeah, and Tom, interesting too that as you related to me off camera a moment ago, a lot of these instances of hate are happening in the workplace.
Yeah, that's right. The reports are clear on this, that not only have incidents of aggression and hate increased over the last year dramatically, but a lot of these incidents are happening in the workplace. I think that puts a special burden on leaders like myself to stand up and speak out, and other business leaders the same way. If that's where these incidents are occurring, it's our duty to create safe and inclusive workplaces for our employees.
Yeah, and certainly Cummins with a very large Asian workforce with the company around the globe. Tom, before you leave, I do want to ask you about your business outlook for 2021 hopefully coming out of the pandemic. How do you sense the business climate right now?
Well, despite all the constraints we've seen from the pandemic that's impacting all of our lives, in fact, the economy is robust. We're seeing very strong orders from our customers. That really started fourth quarter of last year. We started to see significant increases, and that's continuing now. And our biggest struggle today is keeping up. Our supply chain has been impacted pretty significantly from the pandemic over the last 6 or 9 months. And then I would say even our own factories have had challenges with absenteeism and other things related to the disease. Now it's getting better. The communities are getting stronger. Our ability to respond is getting better. I feel very optimistic about our orders and our business for the year.
Yeah, very bullish. That's positive news. As we wrap up, Tom, your thought on getting back into the office, back into the manufacturing operations, which certainly have been manufacturing, but how about that back to normal, or whatever that normal will be post-pandemic?
Yeah, our manufacturing sites and our technical centers have been working throughout. We've made a lot of changes and improvements to those places. Those are improvements, many of them that we'll keep because they're just better for everybody. We are also making changes to the way we do work all across the company. We've learned a lot in the last year where we've been working remotely, ways to do things more effectively, to travel less, to connect better. But we are all looking forward to the day when we can actually come in the office and see each other. We all miss each other, just to be clear about it. And we are hoping that in the fall we'll be able to do that. We're going to start experimenting with vaccinated groups in the summer, bringing some people in, but I think it will probably be the fall before we really get all the way back in the office, and we are excited about it.
Always great perspective. Tom Linebarger, the CEO at Cummins. Tom, thanks very much for joining us. Hope to see you soon.
My pleasure, Gary. Take care.
All right. Well, University of Notre Dame President Father John Jenkins is my guest on the next edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. He took over as the university's 17th president in 2005, and since then has increased the school's endowment, expanded the student body, and Notre Dame's picturesque campus has seen hundreds of millions of dollars in building projects. Father Jenkins talks about his childhood, his love for Notre Dame, and the importance of partnerships in the community.
South Bend was built on Studebaker, making cars. Studebaker's gone, and it's not coming back. But we need to find the next industry, and that requires, intellectual capital, and it requires entrepreneurial spirit. We can do that with the local community to build opportunities for people in this community. We benefit because we have a stronger community. The community benefits, and that's really our greatest hope, that we can do that together.
And Father Jenkins says that extends throughout the state of Indiana. Fascinating interview with the Notre Dame president. It's on this week's Business and Beyond podcast. To check it out, just go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. Well, also in South Bend, an innovative high-tech farming operation yielding some big results as Pure Green Farms' first harvest is now hitting store shelves. We'll have more on this hydroponic lettuce producer pioneering a new path in agriculture with an emphasis on sustainability and the environment. It's time to go inside innovation, brought to you by Allegion, pioneering safety. Well, South Bend-based Pure Green Farms says it is using the most advanced technology around to create a safe and sustainable environment for year-round farming. In a 4-acre hydroponic indoor farm, they're growing pesticide-free greens that are untouched by human hands until they reach your kitchen. Pleased to welcome to the show CEO Joe McGuire to really learn more about the technology behind Pure Green Farms. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk about this. A very interesting setup. You have Pure Green Farms, southwest side of South Bend, 4 acres under roof right now, some hydroponic lettuce growing. Talk about that process.
Yeah, so we grow fresh lettuce that normally would come from the west coast of the country right here in South Bend, and we do it using hydroponics. And hydroponics is how you just basically grow lettuce in water. And so we're able to automate that process and have a very tight plant density, so we get the volume that we need to be competitive in the marketplace and deliver a beautiful, fresh, sustainable product to consumers.
Well, let's talk about that process because, again, 4 acres under roof, very technology intensive. And as you were telling me off camera, you don't know there's another place with this much technology in this space, maybe in the world.
Yeah, that's what we're being told. Some of the contractors that we work with who build these types of greenhouses all over the world are telling us that this is probably one of the most advanced greenhouses that they've ever worked in the world, which is interesting. And it's all about everything from climate to irrigation to controlling light to controlling nutrients, temperature, et cetera.
And basically you're saying human hands don't touch the product, don't touch the lettuce until they get to the consumer's home.
That's correct. Yeah, from the time that we sow the seeds to the time that we process the lettuce and get it into the container, everything is automated. It's all controlled by robotics and sensors all over the greenhouse.
Yes.
And the harvesting area.
Yeah, so tomatoes I know have been big in the hydroponic area. Now a focus on lettuce and strawberries. What's the opportunity for Pure Green Farms in your view, Joe, from a growth opportunity standpoint?
Yeah, we think that the opportunity is big. That's why there's a big investment that was made here. And we think that we're in a very good location to reach a lot of population. And we think that we can be part of this evolution that's happening in the marketplace where we're changing supply chains and making them better. We're making better products, and we're able to do it with less of a burden on the environment and less of a burden on land. You know, I think we all know what's going on the West Coast. There's a shortage of water, shortage of labor. So you've got all these pressures, and we could do it better here, and we can make it safer and fresher.
Yeah, and you mentioned that investment, nearly $30 million, which is a big number, certainly. As we wrap up, Joe, I know you're in stores now. You got that first harvest you've been working on. Tell us the stores you're in and where you see things going.
Yeah, so right now we're in a whole bunch of northern Indiana Kroger stores, going all the way down toward Indianapolis, and then starting April 5th, we will be in 18 of the Martin stores. And then we're also having a lot of really good conversations with food service companies and directly with restaurants. And once these people eat the lettuce, I'm just amazed at the reaction. I've been in this business for 32 years, and I get excited about lettuce, and I've never been more excited with a product as this one. So it's really fun.
Very good. Interesting indeed. A high-tech operation in South Bend. Joe McGuire, the CEO of Pure Green Farms. We'll look forward to following your story going forward. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Thanks, you, Gary.
All right. Well, Bob Ross, perhaps one of America's, or was America's famous puffy-haired painter. Now the historic Indiana studio where PBS recorded him, creating many of his masterpieces, is honoring Ross with a unique exhibit. Mary Rachel Redmond takes us to Muncie for a look at the Bob Ross experience. Here's what's making news now around Indiana. Brought to you by Chapman Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing. The man for all seasons, Chapman, chapmanheating.com. Well, he's arguably one of the most iconic painters of the 20th century. And although Bob Ross has been gone now for nearly 30 years, the popularity of public television's favorite painter only continues to grow. So it's no happy accident. The Bob Ross experience has seen attendance numbers increase sevenfold since opening as a permanent exhibit last October. Around Indiana reporter Mary Rachel Redmond takes us to Muncie and inside the studio where it all happened.
Who is Bob Ross?
Maybe there's some happy little leaves that live up here.
Bob Ross is an iconic painter.
Let's take a 1-inch brush and some titanium white.
And not just a painter, he's an iconic teacher for an entire generation of kids, of adults, of an entire world.
Inside this old yellow brick house in Muncie, you can almost hear those soothing signature phrases.
Let's build us a happy little sky.
And giving his audience permission to make happy accidents.
Be brave. This is your bravery test.
So this is the actual studio that the Bob Ross did all of these amazing paintings.
Yeah, and this is the actual studio, this is his actual easel, and this is one of his actual paintings.
From 1983 to 88, Bob Ross taped seasons 2 to 15 on the first floor of what was once home to Muncie's public television station, WIPB. But once the joy of painting moved production to Ball State, the studio that had created the cultural icon all but disappeared.
Ooh, nice color. Maybe a little more red.
That is until George Buss and his team at Minnetrista stepped in to revive the Ross legacy.
Realizing that this was the room where Bob had painted, and feeling that power of place, and realizing just how powerful that was. So we worked with our collections team to actually interview old staff to understand their memories. So really everything you see in this room is a collection of memories. And you look at the rest of the room and realize how small it is for how big a thing that was happening in it. So step on up, you can get right up close to it, and you can really get a feel for what it would have felt like.
Did he stand on this?
He did not. That actually is part of one of the things that we've put in just to kind of set the easel off on its own.
And he would just kind of do one of these. And this is where his paint buckets were?
Yeah, and in fact, here, if you look right here, you see that space where it's a little bit more metal than it is paint?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's where he would beat the devil out of it.
Just beat the devil out of it.
I see a pick.
Yeah, things that would have been in the studio at the time. So just before Bob would go on, he would, of course, make sure his hair looked just right and pick out his hair for that great fro. And then a little Vicks Vapor Rub, because honestly, Bob loved to clean out his sinuses just before going on. And this room is full of little discoverables like this.
Let's put a happy little bush right about there.
Ross died of lymphoma in 1995, but his show remains in syndication on PBS stations across the country.
Well, he's a pretty little devil. He lives right there.
Perhaps he's just as popular as ever. So what would the late painter think of the experience that bears his name?
I think he'd be tickled pink. So Bob would love it. I think he would love the idea of his fans being able not just to participate in the space, but also whenever you come here, you get to have an opportunity to put paint to canvas. Because any Bob experience is incomplete without trying something and being part of that fearless creativity.
Even the mistakes, they're in there too.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
All right, Mary Rachel, thank you. Well, also making headlines around Indiana this week, Rack Bunker Data Centers has announced plans to grow its digital co-location services in Northwest Indiana. The minority-owned business provides small tech companies with space and support for computer servers. Rack Bunker says it will open new space at the Digital Crossroad. That's a wholesale data center in Hammond. The company says it was attracted to the center by its security, network connectivity, and scalability. Rack Bunker plans to be operational there by May 1. Before the Hard Rock Casino in Gary opens in the spring, it needs to hire about 150 food and beverage employees for its 5 dining options. Hard Rock says overall it will be creating about 800 additional jobs there over the next several months. The CEO of South Bend-based Teachers Credit Union stepped down, and the financial institution has launched a nationwide search for his replacement. TCU says Paul Marsh left the post after working for the credit union for more than 30 years, 10 of those as CEO. Waylon Peterson has been named interim president and CEO. TCU has more than $4 billion in assets and operates nearly 60 branches throughout Indiana and Southwest Michigan. Well, it's a Hoosier business soaring to new heights out of an old elevator plant in Monroe County. Next, we check out Bloomington-based Cardinal Spirits' new bottling facility and what it means for production growth and the bottom line. Well, Cardinal Spirits in Bloomington has been on a roll. This month, Cardinal launching its latest ready-to-drink cocktail, Bourbon Cream Soda, now being distributed in Indiana. This week, the distiller also releasing a new single malt whiskey. New products mean the need for almost 20,000 feet of additional packaging space. And for more on the growth and what's next, pleased to welcome back to the show co-founder Jeff Weslich. And Jeff, welcome to the show as always.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we've had you on a number of times, including not long after you launched in 2015, so 6 years ago or so. A lot has changed. You're now distributing product in 12 states. I know that number is growing. Talk about, give us a thumbnail description of Cardinal Spirits and the distillery, how things are going.
Well, thanks. So Cardinal Spirits, as you said, launched several years ago. We make really great and delicious award-winning spirits and also canned cocktails, of course. And we also do a lot of private label and contract work for retailers, restaurants, even larger brands, all of it done here in Bloomington.
Yeah, you had taken over space in the old Otis Elevator building. You've since moved out of that as you've continued to grow. You're adding 20,000 additional feet for packaging. And I know one of the big drivers are canned cocktails. That's really a hot segment right now.
It really is. People, especially I think during the pandemic, wanted something a little bit easier to drink at home, maybe even while they're out for a walk or at a park or a playground, wherever it may be. And so our canned cocktails have really taken off across the country. The East Coast really loves them, even out in California as well.
You've launched, as I mentioned earlier, some new products this week, this bourbon cream soda and a single malt whiskey. Whiskey is a hot segment of the market as well. So you're really beginning to get into that whiskey market in a big way.
Yeah, and the single malt is fun because I think when people think of an American spirit or certainly a spirit from the Midwest, it's always bourbon. And I love bourbon. I'm sure you love bourbon. We all enjoy bourbon. But single malt is also a really great spirit. And we get to use local grain, and we've aged it all here on site. And so I think people are going to love it. It's great to drink neat or a cocktail with it.
Yeah, your success, the success of brewers like Sun King and others in Indiana, and you and I were talking off camera, you really credit some of that to kind of the state legislature and the governor's office in terms of creating an environment that allows distillers to grow.
Yeah, they've been very forward-thinking about the craft spirits industry in Indiana. Certainly Ed Clear in Southern Indiana, Senator Alteen, and others have really led the way to create an incredible industry just over the last few years. Of course, we always stand on the shoulders of longtime producers like Oliver and the Hubers, who came along much before us to pave the way. But I think people might think that Indiana, as far as alcohol, wouldn't be that, but it's always such a great state for business that I think they were smart enough to see that we can create an industry here. And it's great to have this kind of manufacturing in Indiana. We buy grain from here, we buy labels, we buy bottles, boxes. We're using trucks. I mean, it's always great to have manufacturing as part of your economy.
Growing story, Cardinal Spirits in Bloomington. I know you're looking at Colorado and the coast, as a West Coast as well, and some other markets. Jeff Weslich, thanks as always for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. My pleasure.
All right. When we return, we'll introduce you to the new head at the IU Melvin and Bryn Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center. Stay with us. Well, the C word is avoided in the cancer world, but it was the bold use of the word cure that attracted Dr. Kelvin Lee to become the new head of the IU Melvin and Bryn Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center. Business of Health reporter Kylie Valletta has more about Dr. Lee's vision as he takes the reins.
Thank you, Gary. On the job since last month, Dr. Lee has some very ambitious goals as the new director of the IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center in Indianapolis, but the center already has a legacy of aiming high. As part of the IU School of Medicine Precision Health Initiative, the center is boldly aiming to cure multiple myeloma, and that was a key factor that attracted Dr. Lee to the job. He joins me now to tell us more about his vision. Dr. Lee, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you for having me.
All right, before we get to your goals, let's let's talk first about the Cancer Center, and you're very quick to acknowledge that you are inheriting a world-class team there.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center is really remarkable. Recently got the comprehensive designation, but has been known for decades for really cutting edge and cancer treatment changing research and other work in that area. For example, Dr. Larry Einhorn really is world-renowned for curing a cancer, curing testicular cancer, back when nobody thought you could actually do that with chemotherapy. Dr. Hal Broxmeyer has pioneered the use of cord blood in blood transplants that really has revolutionized that field. So a fabulous history already in the Cancer Center, and we are only looking to move further and further upward.
All right, well, that's a good introduction to talk about your goals. You have two big goals that you want to accomplish in 10 years. The first one I'd like to talk about is a new designation that you want to earn from the National Cancer Institute. You mentioned you already earned the Comprehensive Cancer Center. Mm-hmm. That was in 2019. Tell us how you want to take it to the next level.
So we want to do 10 in 10. So in 10 years, the first objective for us is to get what is essentially a perfect score of 10. When the National Cancer Institute reviews cancer centers, they score them from 9, which is the worst, to 10, which is the best. IU is currently at 20, which is outstanding, but what we want to move up is to a score of 10, again, a perfect score, which very, very few cancer centers in this country have managed to attain.
All right, and then your second goal, you have a very prestigious ranking that you want the center to earn. Tell us about that.
Definitely. Well, so the second 10 is to be a top 10 cancer center in 10 years. And currently, IU is high performing, but not really, not in the top 50. But the people here are fantastic. The patient care here is fantastic. The research here is fantastic. The education here is fantastic. So I think it is going to be something that is going to be very much doable for us to be in the top 10 within 10 years. And just for everybody's knowledge right now, number 10 is Northwestern. So we have somebody to aim for in the city of Chicago.
All right, and that's from the U.S. News and World Report rankings. Let's give just a bit on your background. You spent the last 14 years at Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo, New York. What enticed you to come here?
So as you mentioned in the very beginning, really the boldness and audacity for a university and a cancer center to say we are going to cure a cancer, and it's multiple myeloma, which are the patients that I take care of, but it's also triple negative breast cancer and childhood sarcoma. So 3 cancers that IU has said we want to cure these cancers. And you don't hear that in the cancer world. You don't hear people saying we want to cure these cancers, and these are hard cancers to cure. But the boldness and the audacity of the university to say this is what we want to accomplish, and the fabulous people that are here really was the primary enticement to come here, along with commitment from senior leadership to make this happen. So I'm very, very excited about coming.
All right, and Dr. Lee, at the end of the day, all of these big goals, what does it mean for patient care, for Hoosiers, patients here in Indiana?
Well, I think it means that we will have the best cancer care, the best cancer research, and the best cancer education, not only in Indiana, but in the United States and the world. So people around the world will say, I want to go to Indianapolis. I want to go to IU because they are doing the best care, and they're doing the best research in the cancer that I am struggling with. And so that is a very exciting possibility, and I think that we can do it.
All right, we have just a few seconds left, but you mentioned off camera, relative to other centers, the IU Simon Comprehensive Cancer Center really is a baby compared to some of the other cancer centers in the U.S., which I think makes its accomplishments even that more remarkable, that it's accomplished these things in such few years.
That's exactly right. My previous cancer center, Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center in Buffalo, started in 1895. So it has been a cancer center for over 120, 130 years. So it has been around for a long time. And IU Simon has been a cancer center for a lot less than that, and they've accomplished so much.
All right. Well, Dr. Lee, thank you for being on the show today. Welcome to Indiana, and Godspeed on all of your goals.
Thank you very much, Kylie.
And Gary, back to you.
All right, Kylie, thank you. Well, this week, the Indiana Chamber of Commerce launched an initiative it says is designed to help the state enhance economic competitiveness. The Chamber says the $2 million Accelerating Indiana Vision 2025 Plus includes immediate economic recovery plans for the state, as well as more long-term economic vision. As part of the initiative, a 37-person statewide task force has been formed to develop short-term programs and research based on the events of the past year. The group will be led by Genova's Executive Managing Director, Larry Gigerich, and the initiative will include research studies on energizing the state's entrepreneurial and business startup climate and the impact of automation and artificial intelligence. Up next, March Madness on two levels. College athletes chasing dreams and Hoosier artists using the tournament as a backdrop to showcase their talents. We'll explain when we come back. Well, the 2021 NCAA Men's Final Four was on the distant horizon when our next guest assumed the role of Lucas Oil Stadium director. Little did he or anyone know how it would play out. Bill Benner has more in this week's Inside Indiana Sports. Bill.
Gary, thank you. After a 10-year stint as assistant athletic director at Indiana University, Eric Neuberger took over the stadium director duties in 2017, and now he is poised to lead Indiana's largest venue through the culmination of the most unusual tournament ever, hosting both Elite Eight and Final Four games. And Eric joins us on the program. Welcome, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Bill.
Well, you've hosted first and second round games, so let's start and talk to you generally about how that went at Lucas Oil Stadium.
First and second rounds went fantastic. I think the fans who had the opportunity to attend had a great experience, and the teams that participated gave us really
kind of an unexpected bonus, I guess that's the way to put it, was the unexpected that Lucas Oil had a dress rehearsal. It was real basketball, but a dress rehearsal for the Lucas Oil Stadium basketball setup when the Big Ten announced that the its men's tournament would be there. How valuable was that to you and your staff, Eric?
It was hugely valuable. You know, we found out on February 9th that on March 10th, we would begin the Big Ten men's basketball tournament in Lucas Oil Stadium. What it did is it allowed us to get our setup in place weeks earlier, allowed us to have 13 fantastic games leading up to the NCAA, and gave all of our crew a little bit of extra time to prepare.
And now as we move toward the Elite Eight and the Final Four, the unique thing about Lucas Oil Stadium before the Elite Eight is that you have two courts. I believe they're called the Equality and the Unity courts, one on the north side of the building, one on the south side of the building. And so certainly that gives you the opportunity to move back and forth and empty crowds to cleanse. But again, something unique to your and I know you did it in the first round too, but something unique to Lucas Oil Stadium had the two courts.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to have a game on the north and a game on the south for each of the 2 days of the Elite Eight. We don't know which one will go first yet as we await broadcast decisions, but it gives us the opportunity to clean and make sure that each court is set and ready to go.
And as unique as this experience has been, one of the advantages, and we talked about this, Eric, is the fact that you've got staff who actually go all the way back to the Hoosier Dome days. And so you've got an experienced crew there working with you at Lucas Oil Stadium.
We do. The stadium staff lives for these moments. These are the opportunities. These are many of the reasons that folks decide to work for a stadium like ours, because it's not easy work. And we go back all the way to that 1991 Final Four, where we have folks on staff who had big parts in making that so successful.
Can you talk about attendance now for both the Elite Eight, again, the two different courts being used, and then the Final Four itself? What do you anticipate in terms of attendance?
Well, the primary driver of attendance for us is being able to separate households as 2s and 4s and 6s at least 6 feet away from anybody neighboring them. So that puts us at about 22% when you take into account the space needed around the court and around the broadcast positions.
And then I know you've worked closely with the Marion County Health Department. I was there for the Big Ten semifinal. You know, I thought the staff just did an excellent job being kind and considerate and very courteous, but still enforcing the mask mandate that remains in place.
Yeah, we take that on as a big responsibility of hosting these events during a pandemic. And so we've implemented signs, training for folks. We've gone to a completely cashless building where all our transactions are contactless, and we've gone to digital ticketing.
Well, I know one of the treats for me was watching people as they get close to Lucas Oil Stadium. They see the window with the decal, and again, Lucas Oil Stadium has now become synonymous with the Final Four. So this is again another huge asset for the city of Indianapolis.
Yeah, the city has really come together to make this all happen. We're really, really proud to be a part of it.
And as we wrap up, I got to ask you, Eric, how will you and your staff feel when we get to Tuesday, April 6th, assuming that all things will go well?
And that's the assumption I'm working on. I think we'll have a great feeling of relief. And as soon as our friends from the NCAA walk out that door, our team will be getting some rest.
Well, Eric, best wishes as we move to the Elite Eight and the Final Four. It's been an incredible effort on behalf of so many, including you and your outstanding Lucas Oil Stadium staff. We wish you the best.
Thank you very much, Bill.
And thank you, Eric. And Gary, back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you. Well, high-end basketball skills aren't the only talents being showcased in Indiana this month. During March Madness, hundreds of visual artists, musicians, dancers, and other creative industry professionals have turned downtown Indianapolis into a sidewalk art gallery called Swish. We get details now on the Arts and Cultural Festival from Arts Council of Indianapolis Director of Public Art, Julie Muni-Moore. And Julie, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
This is, I think, really an amazing display of talent of Indianapolis's arts and culture community as well. Talk about, Julie, how this kind of started, because I think it was going to be part of the Final Four when it was just going to be the Final Four here. But now with everything here, Swish expanded as well.
Yes, absolutely. We were going to do something having to do with the arts and culture community for the Final Four, but we never imagined it would be anywhere near this big. And as soon as that decision was made, we just blew it out of the water.
Yeah, and I've heard from a number of people. Indeed, that's a great description, just in terms of the magnitude and the variety, the diversity of arts and artists taking place down there. Give us. Tough to do it in a limited amount of time, but just give us an idea of what people are seeing downtown with the Swish exhibit.
Wow, we have over 650 Indianapolis creatives that are showcased. It's an outdoor arts and cultural festival. We have murals in storefronts. We have scheduled and pop-up performances. We have 4 court murals that are interactive 3-dimensional murals that you can literally step into and interact with. We have a public art tour. And we've got some basketball history tours, and the live entertainment is just, you know, sometimes we don't even know where it's going to be. It'll just pop up.
That's great. I think it's a great example, too, and you and I were talking about this off camera, and the fact that sports and arts and culture really have been, for a long time, great teammates, if you will, here in Indianapolis. And this is really a great example of how sports and the arts can come together and have tremendous impact.
Yes, absolutely. People aren't just interested in one thing when they come to Indianapolis. They're not just interested in the game. They're interested in seeing everything that we have to offer. And the arts is an important part of what we have to offer.
How important is this opportunity as well for the artists from the timing of when it's happening now, coming out of the pandemic? And obviously the pandemic has had a dramatic effect on everyone, but in particular the arts community.
Yeah, the arts community experienced about 32,000 cancellations.
Wow.
And with every cancellation, that's an artist not getting paid or a venue not receiving any income. So this is extremely challenging, and to have the opportunity to put some income into the hands of artists is just astonishing.
Yeah. What about the opportunity for Indianapolis, and certainly quality of place, quality of life, very important in the economic development world and attracting companies and keeping companies and talent here. This chance to showcase what's here, how big of an opportunity is that for the arts community?
It's huge. Whenever we have whenever we have people coming from all over the country and even the world for such a high-profile event, they're not just looking at the event; they're looking at everything, who we are and what we have to offer, and envisioning themselves here. And it is absolutely something that can turn into much more things down the road. Yeah,
Julie, as we wrap up here, give us an idea. What are you hearing? What's some of the feedback you're hearing from people to Swish Indie?
Well, first of all, they're saying we had no idea that there were so many good artists in Indianapolis. And these are people who live here, which is really amazing. And then we're seeing visitors saying, Indy is fun. Indy is exciting, and they really rolled out the welcome mat for us. And I think arts are very much part of that welcome mat.
Very well said. The Swish Arts and Cultural Festival continues in downtown Indianapolis, really making a splash, if you will, during March Madness. And Julia Muni-Moore, really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and good luck with the rest of March Madness and beyond.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Well, up next, the pandemic's toll on women in the workforce and how higher education, in particular WGU Indiana, is addressing the issue. Stay with us. COVID-19 has had disproportionate effects on women in the workforce, especially women of color. A recent study from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows more than 5 million women lost their jobs last year, 140,000 alone between November and December. WGU Indiana Chancellor Allison Bell joins us now with some perspective on how higher education can play a role in addressing the issue. And Allison, as always, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, if you could expand on that a little bit, Allison, I know there's been a lot of coverage on the impact on women during the pandemic, but in terms of that disproportionate impact on women, and especially women of color, what are you seeing?
Well, I think that what we know is that women and women of color tend to work in service industries. Those industries have been highly impacted by the pandemic. So retail and education and healthcare. And now they've lost their jobs. They're at home, probably looking for a way to, now that things are starting to return to normal, get back to work. And one of the ways they can do that is through education.
Talk about what you're seeing here in Indiana specifically. I know you don't have numbers per se, but maybe some anecdotal stories you're seeing of women being impacted during the pandemic.
Absolutely. And a couple of different women that I met just recently who are scholarship recipients for WGU Indiana. One woman, her name is Tosi. She graduated from Ivy Tech. She was working full time. She had a couple of things happen in her personal life around the pandemic and lost her job as she applied to return to complete a bachelor's degree at WGU Indiana. And she said to us that, if it weren't for this flexible option, she wouldn't be able to complete her degree. And then so she'd be at home, single mother, and no work. So she's one example of someone who was impacted. Another woman that we met recently, she was working on her degree while she, at a brick and mortar institution, while she worked in a classroom, working toward her teaching degree, found out she was pregnant, was unable to continue working in the classroom, had to stop her degree program progress, and found WGU Indiana, and now she's working towards her degree here. But those are a couple of examples here in Indianapolis.
You sense that education in general is that lifeline, or can be that at least part of that solution, especially when it comes to women in the workforce as we go post-pandemic?
Absolutely. I think here's what's important to remember is that we're generalizing, and there are always exceptions, but women primarily also bear the responsibility of caregiving. They suddenly have become homeschoolers. Women now spend an average of 15 hours a week on care outside of work, right? So if they've lost their jobs, they're taking care of their children at home, and now they're needing to maybe redirect, find a new career path. One of the ways they could do that is by returning to complete a degree. But if you're not working, you need something that doesn't cost very much, that's affordable, that's flexible, and that's what we offer at WGU Indiana, but there are a lot of options like that out there.
Yeah, as we wrap up, Allison, as you look at, again, that post-pandemic world from a WGU Indiana standpoint, obviously you're an online institution, but how do you sense that the quote-unquote new normal will be coming out of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the new normal is going to incorporate a lot of the flexibility that was forced upon us. You know, when the pandemic hit, we all went home, we all started doing school online, and we've seen that it can work and that it actually makes more sense in some ways. So I think we'll continue to see that flexibility in our work lives. And then, you know, in hybrid, you know, learning formats, whether it be in the K-12 setting or in the secondary education setting.
Allison Bell's the chancellor at WGU Indiana. And Allison, as always, great to have you on the show. Hope to see you soon.
Thanks, Gary, as always.
All right. Well, since Father John Jenkins became Notre Dame's 17th president in 2005, the university has increased its endowment, expanded the student body, and the school's picturesque campus, well, it's seen hundreds of millions of dollars in building projects. Father Jenkins is my guest on the latest episode of the Business and Beyond podcast. Born the third eldest of Harry and Helen Jenkins' 12 children in Omaha, he spoke about those early years, including one of his first jobs working in the stockyards.
I worked at a meatpacking plant, and you know, oddly, it was dirty work. It was stinky work, frankly, and it was hard work. But it was a great work because you dealt with such an array of people. I mean, it's all classes, all backgrounds.
More with Notre Dame President Father John Jenkins, including the interest in Notre Dame connecting with the state. That's in the latest episode of our Business and Beyond podcast. To check it out, go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com and click on the subscribe tab. An Indianapolis-based ag tech startup that was born out of a beekeeping club at Indiana University is marking 5 years in business. The B Corp, which has developed technology to help commercial beekeepers determine the strength of their hives, was founded in Bloomington by Ellie Sims and Wyatt Wells in 2016 with the goal of helping to prevent hive loss. The pair entered a student business competition and left with what they call a healthy investment and an advisory group to grow the business. The B Corp secured $1 million in funding last August from Indianapolis-based Elevate Ventures, IU Ventures, and Thrive in California. The company has also tripled its revenue over the last year. The company currently has 8 full-time staff and 9 interns with plans to add more employees over the next several years. And I'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Coming up next week, the Indiana chapter of Bunker Labs has just launched. Learn more about this national nonprofit dedicated to helping veterans, military spouses, military-connected individuals start their own businesses. Plus, Clark Kellogg will weigh in on March Madness. We'll have those stories and a whole lot more coming up next week. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Gary Dick. Go out and make it a successful week.
Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is a production of Grow Indiana Media Ventures with support from WFYI Productions.